Salofalava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susanna Swiswiki. Coming up.
People were able to make contact with each other to families.
No damage in Tonga following an earthquake. Meanwhile,
what if this building collapse? What if this ceiling fall on me?
A Fijian expat describes the terrifying scenes in Myanmar. And
you're playing there more than yourself and for your organisation. You're representing the kids here in front of you. You're representing the people in the islands.
Moana Pasifika claims Crusaders' scalp on their home ground. Life has returned to normal in Tonga after it was struck by a strong earthquake in the early hours of Monday morning. There have been no reports of damage, but the quake brought back memories of the 2022 eruptions and tsunami. Caleb Fotheringham has more.
Tsunami sirens rang out across the kingdom for hours after the magnitude 7 quake struck at about 20 past 1, 79 kilometres south-southeast of Pangai in the Hapai group of islands. The warning was cancelled by local authorities just before 5 a.m. local time. Salote Sisifa says the shake was slow but major, and she quickly got her children up as soon as the sirens started.
You could see the fear in their eyes, and it was just a matter of calming each other and due process of evacuation and saying, letting them know it's all right.
Ms. Sisifa says the evacuation was a success for the country, which she attributes to regular drills and communication lines remaining intact, something that was missing in 2022.
People were able to make contact with each other to families, and we were still hearing authorities on the radio putting out the warnings and what to do, evacuations and whatnot.
She says everything is now back to normal.
Business as usual, but having said that, I think when it did happen last night, when the sirens went off, automatically to every Tongan and child that had experienced 2022, it was almost like you just relived that memory once again.
Ben Maloney, a New Zealander who's been living and working on and off in Tonga's capital, Nuku'alofa, for the past year, says small earthquakes are common, but he's never felt anything of that magnitude.
I woke up to the windows were rattling like pretty loud, and I thought it was just the wind, and then I felt the building shaking. And I'm up on the second floor, so it was quite intense. That one, it started sort of rolling me around in bed, and yeah, it was a little bit scary, kind of exciting, but scary at the same time.
He's now back at work.
It's just business as usual. A lot of the boys didn't show up because I guess everyone got evacuated and no one's had much sleep. But no, everyone's pretty calm, I think.
There are no reports of damage from Tonga. Local journalist George Lavaka says everything appears to be okay, but there are a few tired faces about.
I'm looking around in the buildings opposite me with glass windows and all that, including our own office here. I can't see any damage.
Mr. Lavaka says a couple of schools decided not to open to give children a chance to rest today.
One school or two schools so far now have cancelled for the day because they did not go back home until after 5 from wherever they were. But things are back to normal now.
Auckland Tongan community leader Pakilau Manasilua says the 2022 volcanic eruption and tsunami was front of mind when he heard the news this morning.
They're much more prepared for things like this, especially if there are tsunamis and things like that, which occurred after the eruption. So I think people are better prepared now.
New Zealand's Foreign Affairs Ministry says it has had no requests for help from the 31 New Zealanders registered with Safe Travel as being in Tonga. They say New Zealand has also offered the kingdom assistance, but none has been requested.
To help us better understand earthquakes, I spoke with GNS seismology scientist John Ristow and began by asking him why there was little damage in Tonga.
Well, the earthquake, despite being a fairly large earthquake, magnitude 7, and not too deep, it was about 25 kilometers deep, it was some distance offshore out in the ocean. So there was, it was probably at least a couple hundred kilometers, I think, maybe from land. So there was that distance. So by that time, a lot of the strong shaking would have, kind of petered out, and you just kind of had probably a lot of like slow swaying of buildings, but not any of the really strong shaking.
Mm. And despite the tsunami warning being lifted, are they completely safe from further risks?
From this earthquake, yes. The tsunami danger from this earthquake passed, I think, about an hour after the earthquake occurred. It was determined that there was no longer a tsunami risk from it. There was a small tsunami that was recorded in Tonga, but it was only a few centimeters.
Is it in relation to the earthquake that struck South Island last week?
Is there any relation? No, there's no relation other than that they occur along the same plate boundary. So along there we have the Pacific plate and the Australian plates are colliding with each other and pushing beneath one another and sliding past each other. But one earthquake did not cause the other one. They were too distant there was too much separation, thousands of kilometers between them.
There seems to be a pattern of earthquakes recently. I mean, I'm thinking about the one that happened in Myanmar last week, the 7.7 magnitude, which was quite devastating. How unusual is it to have multiple earthquakes happen around the same time?
It's not that unusual. It's kind of a coincidence. There's actually, if you look at kind of the global statistics of earthquakes over a long time, you can probably there's probably about an average of around 10 magnitude 7 earthquakes that occur somewhere in the world every year. So that's almost one every month. So they're not that unusual, and of course, since that they can kind of be randomly spaced in time, you can get 2 or 3 that occur closely together in time, and then you might go months without seeing one. I guess one thing to share that we get, especially from the Tonga earthquake and the one off the South Island that we had last week, is for people to always be aware, when it comes to large offshore earthquakes, that New Zealand is definitely at risk for tsunamis. So you should always be aware of any natural warning signs for tsunamis. If you see anything unusual with the water, or if you get a tsunami warning from the National Emergency Management Agency, to heed those warnings and take care around the water if there is a tsunami warning.
What if this building collapsed? That's the thought that came into the mind of Fijian expat Manasa Garanivalu, who recalls his terrifying experience of the 7.7 magnitude earthquake that struck near Myanmar's central city, Mandalay, last Friday. Speaking to Pacific Waves from Bangkok, Manasa Garanivalu says he's safe but shaken. During our talanoa, I asked him about rescue and relief efforts.
Actually, we are so grateful right now, straight after the earthquake on Saturday, the Singaporean Army, the rescue missions that came, Vietnam, India, Bangladesh, and just yesterday before we left Myanmar, we had the Thai Royal Forces, they came with supplies and stuff like that, just to help in the rescue effort that is happening in Mandalay right now. And the death toll still increasing over that now, and there's a lot of work to be done. At the same time, people are bringing in water, food, and blankets and pillows, just to help them through this challenging time.
How are the local communities in Myanmar and Bangkok coping? And you brought up that you were with other Pacific families in Bangkok, is that right?
Yes. We came yesterday, and they were all here, and everybody just congregated together and just share through, how was it when you guys going through that situations, and everybody on the same boat, everybody on the same waka, and we feel the waves and stuff like that, and it's we've been traumatized with what did happen, and so. But it was very good that everybody connects together, talk heart to heart, and what we've been going through. Yes, it was a very good time, encouragement for us, just to see another, Pasifika Vuvale, just talking about life. Yeah.
And whereabouts from the Pacific are these other families from? Is it just Fiji or?
Fiji and from Samoa. Yeah. There's a Samoan family and the Fijian family over here. So we're trying to catch up with some other Fijian families that are also here in Bangkok.
And have you been able to message your family in Fiji to let them know that you're safe?
Yeah, actually, I was Fiji. I brought my family back home, so they were worrying about us and seeing news online, stuff like that. So I'm so grateful that I talked to my mom.
And how did you end up living in Myanmar? What brought you there in the first place?
Actually, we work with the University of the Nations. It's kind of like a NGO ministry in Myanmar. So my specialty is to work with deaf people, special education. And we moved into Myanmar in 2012, and we're still there now. Both my kids were made in Myanmar, and we love Myanmar. Yeah, there's a lot of deaf. The highest percentage of deaf populations in Myanmar, about 0.7 million people, and there are only 3 schools throughout the country. So we believe that it's important to have the deaf community, deaf children to be educated. So that's why we end up in Myanmar.
The death toll so far stands at 1,700. For the latest update, head over to rnz.co.nz. The Samoan government has declared a state of emergency as the main island of Upolu grapples with a severe power crisis. Major disruptions to Samoa's electricity supply have affected residents and businesses, with power rationing in place since February. Joining me is our Samoan Affairs reporter, Grace Viva'ai. Talofalava Grace, what's the latest in Samoa?
Talofalava Susana. So the latest in Samoa is that a cable fault between Whianga and Fuluaso caused a blackout last month, while 3 generator failures reduced power generation. So Samoa's electricity supply is experiencing significant disruptions, affecting, Airbnb operators, businesses, and tourism services. Problems on Upolu Island began in February, after a political crisis, and now there's a power crisis, forcing the Electrical Power Corporation, known as EPC, to ration power.
And Grace, how long will the state of emergency be in place for?
That's a good question, Susana. The Prime Minister, Fiamea Naomi Mata'afa, said that the EPC is supported by the government. They're working together to fix these issues, and the state of emergency orders are expected to end until the 29th of April. In the meantime, though, large electricity generators are expected to arrive from overseas on the 5th of April as a temporary measure, with permanent solutions anticipated by August.
Moana Pasifika did what many thought was impossible at the Apollo Project Stadium in Christchurch on Saturday night, when they defeated the Crusaders 45-29 in their Super Rugby Pacific battle. But for head coach Fa'alongotana Umanga and captain Ari Savea, it was something they had worked hard for in the preparation week prior to making their trip down south. The messages were simple from them to the players: have self-belief, trust the process, start well and be consistent for 80 minutes. Elisa Tora followed the action and filed the story.
It was evident from the first result that Moana Pasifika were intent on leaving it all on the field, as over 20,000 Crusaders fans were silenced when their visitors rattled, bruised and bulldozed the home side into submission over 80 minutes. Inspirational captain Savea, who scored a double in the first quarter of the game, says the players gave their all for the win.
Those games you've got to give it your all, especially against a real quality Crusader side. So a lot of the boys are quite just sitting there staring, just exhausted, but deep down very, very happy. We talked about starting well. I thought we did that, and I thought, we talked about winning collisions, and we won a few of those collisions in the contact and allowed our ball players to play. So, we happy with that and just real grateful to get the win.
Team head coach Umanga says the team kept fighting from start to finish.
We wanted to fight for everything that we could get, and then once we were in certain positions, teams find it hard to stop us. So, it's just understanding all those kind of things, and then not buttoning off. That's probably the biggest thing. When we score and then letting teams get back in the game, or letting games get away from us.
The former All Blacks captain added that the team was able to mix structured rugby with their poly flair to get the win.
Oh, we're very proud, and that's what we talked about. We know we have that in us, the ability to make things out of nothing, but we know it's not sustainable to get success. It looks great for a highlight reel. We really emphasise our Moana work rate, and working hard for each other and working hard for what we need. We try and be ruthless around our game, around the detail in our game. We know that our poly flavour will come through, when we need it.
Meanwhile, Captain Savea says while they are happy with the win, rugby is about getting back-to-back wins, which is going to be their next challenge as their focus shifts to the Waratahs, who they will host at home in North Harbour on Saturday.
We'd be proud of that performance, but the thing about rugby, you've got to back it up, and there's going to be a lot of hype around this win and this team, and the encouragement to the boys is stay grounded, stay in the middle, and just enjoy tonight. And then when we come in on Monday, let's get our lessons, refocus, and try and get a win and get back to back.
Moana Pasifika has jumped to 9th spot on the points table and have upcoming matches at home against the Waratahs, the Brumbies, the Fijian Rua, and the Blues over the next few weekends. They will need to win at least 5 of their remaining matches to be able to secure a top 6 finish.
That's Pacific Waves for today. For all episodes, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple, and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, Tofa Soifua.